So I invented a few things. 2 for McAdoo, okay, which was actually quoted in Sports Illustrated, but they never mentioned my name. They just said the PA, okay. And then a dandy was a dandy by Randy.
It's time now for the Nuff Said with Bob Koshinski podcast, brought to you by Chef's Famous Italian Restaurant, home to spaghetti parm, and Rich Entertainment. They bring friends and family together through unforgettable experiences. And the Big Weck Radio, home to the oldies. Bob's guest on this episode is Buffalo broadcast giant and former PA announcer for both the Braves and Bills, Dan Neverth.
Welcome back to another edition of Nuff Said with yours truly. We've got a great podcast for you today, but before we get into it, I want to thank, of course, Lou and Mary Beth Billetier from the famous Chef's Italian Restaurant. We're in the French Connection Room where we record each and every week, and you can't pass up on that spaghetti parm. And, of course, the Big Weck, Buddy Shula and Company. They're a big part of what we do to help promote what the podcast is, and we want to also welcome, again, Rich Entertainment, and they've been on board for the last month. And I have to mention, and I talked about this last week, we lost one of the great ones last week, and John Dandies, and he was involved with the Bisons and Rich Entertainment for so many years. And there'll be more on that coming up on future podcasts. But today I'm so pleased to have, you know, I used to say I grew up with this guy, but we worked together. Daniel Neverth. Dan, it's so great to have you here.
Wow, is he still alive, that Dan Neverth guy?
And you're what, 86 now?
Yeah, 7.
You are 87?
Yes.
You're in the best shape of anybody I know. You work out like every day, right?
Well, not every day, 3 times a week.
Wow, that's...
I can do 100 push-ups.
That's 3 times more than, yeah, I do.
No, I do push-ups, and then somebody will come up to me, because I work out at the YMCA. And somebody will come up to me and say, yeah, I see you doing those push-ups. Those aren't real push-ups. What do you mean? Oh, no, a real push-up, your nose has to be on the floor like this. And I said, do you realize how old I am and I'm doing this? To me, it's a real push-up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember we did a Wrestling Legends of the On Anniversary show at the Riverworks a number of years ago, and you did push-ups in the ring for everybody to demonstrate your physical prowess.
Wow, physical prowess.
But you're here today. Now, we could go into the broadcast career, and I wouldn't have enough time on this podcast because you were a giant of radio, you did television. Now you're still doing, online videos, some really funny ones. So you've never really gotten out of the business.
No, not really. I don't miss the business that much, but I'm having fun doing the fun things. But I was in broadcasting at the right time.
Right.
I really was. And at that time, everybody that I work with, including yourself, were all professionals, and everybody had their thing that they were doing, and they would appreciate what the other people were doing too. So yeah, I had a great career at KB Radio, and also WHTT. I was there for like 13 years, and that's an interesting story. I know you're mostly sports, but I have to tell you this. When I worked at WKBW, my son Dan, who just came out of college, they asked me. They said, your son took broadcasting in college. Would he like to work here part time? So I said, yeah, probably. I've never pushed with 4 boys. I've never pushed any of them. I've never gotten any jobs for them. Okay, so he's hired at WKBW Radio. So he's there for about a year and a half and doing all the little stuff. And he would work overnight so that he could play the tapes the next Sunday morning for the religious shows and stuff. So he was very, very active at the station. So a new manager came in. And he said, I don't think it's a good idea for family members to be working together. So you're going to have to let him go. Well, they actually let him go in the office while I'm sitting there. Okay. So they fired my son while I'm sitting right across from him. Okay. Which didn't seem to make much sense. Okay. So anyway, he ends up, the guy who fired him was Sandy Beach, and he was a program director. And Sandy goes to WHTT, and guess who his sports guy was? My son.
Yeah.
Okay, so he fired him, and then he brought him over, and they're competing against me. my own son. Okay, so, but it all worked out.
But Sandy always said he hated that day.
Yes.
Because you guys were great friends, and you still are.
Yeah, definitely. He's a great guy. He really is.
Okay, so you're here specifically, and then we're going to get into everything else.
For the spaghetti parm.
For the spaghetti.
That's the only reason. What, do you think I'm here because of you?
I knew free food would bring you in.
Yeah, right.
So you were the PA announcer for both the Buffalo Braves and the Buffalo Bills in the 70s. Right. So let's start with the Braves.
Wait a minute. Before let's give me more credit. The Buffalo Breskies, women's professional softball, and world team tennis. I have no idea about anything in tennis, okay? So they said, well, you're doing this and this and this. Well, why don't you be the PA announcer for Will? I said, I don't know anything about tennis. I don't know what love means. Is it some kind of a sexy thing? I'm not sure. So I said, what'll I do? Well, we're going to have a guy sit next to you, and he'll tell you what to say. And so I did that for 2 seasons, and they're here now to arrest me.
They finally caught up to you, yeah.
Yes.
So what year was that? Do you remember?
Oh, no, I don't, but it was...
it had to be in the 70s, right?
Yes, but it lasted, I think, 2 seasons.
All right, so then I'm going to jump ahead to a question I was going to ask you, because we've sat down a couple times to do interviews. The first one I did with you was in 1978 when I was working on local cable in Niagara Falls. And that's when it was revealed that one of your early stops was at Cottersport, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
And we had John Regis's daughter in the room with us when we were doing the interview. She was like interning with us. But one of the interviews I did the night of the Giants of Radio that they did at the History Museum, you revealed to me that when you did the morning show, you were always tired.
Oh, yes.
And I can see why, because you were working nights, right? The Braves games, and the Bills played Sunday afternoon, but I imagine the softball games and the tennis games. I mean, you were always out working when you probably should have been home taking a nap.
The only one I didn't do PA for was the Sabres, but we had season tickets. So I was in the auditorium 4 nights a week doing work for the Braves, and my wife and I, Marie and I, would go to the Sabres games. But
when did you sleep?
You know what? When I took over the morning show, Stan Roberts was the morning guy, and he had a job offer in Boston. Good, big deal for him. So when he left, they came to me and they said, we think we'd like you to do the morning show. And I said, I can't do that because I sleep till 9 o'clock in the morning. I can't ever do a morning show. So I mentioned it to Sandy Beach, and he said, here's what you do. You tell them you'll do the morning show if you work 5 days. Everybody at the station works 6 days, okay? And a really unusual schedule. So you would work 5 days and then Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, okay? And it just messes up your whole weekend. So he said, if you tell them that, and so I never got more money for doing the morning show, but I got 5 days. Even Clint Buellman never worked 5 days a week.
And he was the dominant number one guy at WBEN.
No way you could ever beat him. Yeah. We did beat him during the blizzard of 77. And that's only because he got cranky. He got really cranky during that. And we were on the air telling people, here's where you can get bread and milk, and this street is open, or this store is open. And people felt, because they thought they were going to die. A lot of people really thought
it was horrible.
Blizzard of 77.
And you were the guy also outside doing the weather outside on Channel 7 because Tom Jones was snowed in Orchard Park.
Yes.
You were able to make it.
Right. I had a lot of fun doing the weather because I'm not a meteorologist. I don't even know how to spell meteorology. Anyway, but I would get the information from AccuWeather, and then we put some little funny things together. And my thought was, right now, weather is the biggest thing on television. It's unbelievable. Even the national news sweeping this nation tonight as we come on the air, another storm. It's like every night there's a huge storm. If it's not in the South, it's out in California, it's in the Midwest, it's in the East Coast. There's always a storm sweeping the nation, okay? We're in Buffalo. We handle all that stuff. We do.
But it's still big news in this town, too.
Yeah.
It leads every newscast when there's snowflake falls. So you're the PA announcer for the Buffalo Braves.
Right.
which was, you've got to be of a certain age to even understand what that was. Buffalo had their own NBA basketball team. Ernie D. and Randy Smith and Bob McAdoo. So how do you get the job so you're the morning you're the morning jock on KB, right?
Right.
Very popular. You're doing commercials. So how did you get the job doing PA announcing for the Buffalo Braves?
They came to me after the announcer that they had for the first year was arrested. He was involved in a bank robbery, and it was a sad thing because it was a mental thing.
Yeah.
He had some real serious problems. And can you imagine being arrested in front of your kids on their front lawn? I mean, it was awful, okay? So they said, we want you to do this. And they sent me down to New York, Madison Square Garden, to sit next to the guy who was doing the PA announcing and kind of watch him, and then came back and started doing it. So I invented a few things. 2 for McAdoo, okay, which was actually quoted in Sports Illustrated, but they never mentioned my name. They just said the PA, okay. And then a dandy was a dandy by Randy, okay. So when Bob McAdoo was traded away to the New York Knicks, I was talking about it on the air, and somebody called, and because I was complaining, what am I going to say now? There's no more 2 for McAdoo. I got to come up with something. This John Giannelli was the guy coming in. He's going to be the center for the Buffalo Braves. And a guy called and he said, you don't have to worry about that, Dan, because Giannelli doesn't score at all. He's terrible. Okay, so I put that on the air and I talked about it, and I get a call from the public address, from the PA guy, who's
the PR guy.
That guy. Okay,
Yeah.
I knew it just started with a P.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I think I have to. No. So anyway, he called and he said, "You can't do that. You can't talk about our team like that. You're the public address announcer." And I said, "Well, yeah, but I'm a radio announcer here. That's what I do. And then I work for you at night over here." So long story short, he said, "Well, we're going to have to let you go." So I said, "Well, I guess you have to." So he said, "And we also want you to give back the 2 tickets that you get for the games."
That was part of your
That was part of my
stipend.
deal.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, making the big bucks and
Yeah.
2 tickets. So I said, "No, you're not getting the tickets back. I'm not going to give them back to you." And there was another Brave story that I think is pretty interesting. I showed you a copy
Yeah.
of it. Paul Snyder was not the most popular owner.
Well, and explain who Paul Snyder was back in that, because he was one of the heavy hitters in town financially. Yeah.
Sure. Well, he had
What was it, Freezer King that he owned?
Freezer Queen. Yeah. And I mean, he was a guy who started from the bottom. I mean, he worked his way up and made a ton of money doing that. He bought the Braves and started here in Buffalo with them. And when he traded Bob McAdoo away, the fans were really upset, okay, because he was like one of the big draws for the fans.
He was one of the top 3 players in the league.
Exactly. We had him, okay?
Yeah.
So we get rid of him. It was a monetary thing, I guess, and Paul was very unpopular. So we're playing the Boston Celtics, and the game was not going in our favor. And there were a lot of calls by the referees, and it was going against the Braves, and the people were booing and all upset. And I noticed Paul Snyder sitting with his wife on the opposite side of the arena, directly across from me, and I saw him call over the security guard, because he always had the security guard there, because as I said, he wasn't too popular. Okay, people will throw stuff at him. Okay, so the security guard, he pulls out a piece of paper and he writes it, hands it to the guard. The guard starts walking across behind him and over to me, and I knew before he even got there that it was something that he was going to hand me. It was a piece of paper, and it was a note, and the note said, "Please make this announcement. If I single you, make this announcement. Please do not boo the poor officiating." And he was, "I'll take complete responsibility." I've kept that for almost 40 years. I still have it. It's in a little piece of plastic. Okay. So about 2 weeks after that, fortunately, the game turned around and we didn't have to read it. I didn't have to do it. Because I like to do a lot of strange, wacky things, but I was getting nervous. It was like, what if I have to read this? What if what'll happen? Okay. So a couple of weeks later at a party for the Braves, I went up to him and I said, "Paul, what would have happened if I read that?" And he started laughing. He said, "I checked with the league. They would have fined him $5,000, which is a lot of money at that time, okay? And he said, and they would have thrown you, the referees would have thrown you out of the arena, which probably would have been funny.
Yeah, that would have been not
them.
Great radio, but it would have been great television.
Yes,
yeah. So you were the PA announcer, and then you were, because your bread and butter was the morning radio show.
Boy.
So you couldn't not be funny in the morning just because of the basketball gig at night.
Exactly.
But then when did you get the job working for the Buffalo Bills?
The Buffalo Bills, for their first season at Rich Stadium, and the very first play of the very first game, the Washington guy picked up the ball in the end zone. We kicked off to them and ran for a touchdown. The very first play ever.
Right, in the stadium.
Yeah, in the stadium. And I had a lot of fun doing the Buffalo Bills because you could really, you could create some excitement, okay? It's not like it is now. Now it's all music and screaming and it's loud and, come on, make some more noise, make that, Okay, but my mistake was, and I was fired by the Buffalo Bills. My mistake was, and I thought it was an innocent thing, we're playing the New England team, and I announced, because they gave you statistics at the end of the first half, and it was the first time that we had held New England scoreless, because that's when they were really, really good, and they were a dynasty, okay? And so I mentioned it, and I thought it was a pretty innocent thing, and the fans liked it. Yeah, wow, we held them in the first half. Well, it turns out that the teams get very, very nervous about stuff that could go up on the board, okay? All the players saying, look at this.
They didn't want anything to inspire the other team, right?
Okay, so they called me in. The PA had the public address now.
PR guy.
The PR. Why do I have trouble with PA? I don't. Okay, PA is Pennsylvania. But anyway, he called me and he said, I was going to take you. Listen to this. I was going to take you to lunch and tell you, that we're going to have to let you go. But I know you're busy. So I didn't even get a lunch. Can you imagine
you didn't get a free
that?
lunch hour.
Seriously. Yeah, I'm going to fire you, and I was going to take you to lunch and fire you, but I know you're busy, so I'm not going to do that. So we don't have to let you go. And the reason I was let go was the general manager. Who was the general manager? He was a genius, but never.
Well, what was the year?
This was in the 70s, probably, late 70s. Okay, he went on to he ended up being fired himself after a few years.
They all do.
Oh, yes,
they all do.
No, but the guy was a genius, but he didn't like me. So, and then I heard from the guy who actually did the firing over the phone. He said, we're going to have Stan Roberts do it because we were at something at the University of Buffalo, and he liked what Stan how he started and sounded. So we're going to use him. So that was the end of my career there.
So for some people, if they get fired once in their life, it's a very traumatic, something they'd never get over. Yeah. For you, it was just part of your makeup, right?
How many times? You know what, though, thinking back, that bothered me more than the thing with the Braves. Because I really enjoyed doing that. Because I was actually quoted on national TV. Somebody had set off a smoke bomb in the end zone. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, a reminder, smoking is dangerous to your health. And everybody laughed and, hey, okay. Stuff like, little things like that. But I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it.
One of the reasons I probably get such enjoyment out of your performance and knowing you is we are both a tad sarcastic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's a perfect environment for you when you have 80,000 people and you see instant reaction. Because when you're on the radio, you say something funny, you don't know. You don't know if it's working or not, right?
Right.
But you've got the audience right in front of you.
Yeah, it's and I learned a lot over the years. We were talking off the air about Van Miller. Okay, Van Miller, in my estimation, he was the most talented broadcaster in the city ever because he did everything. I mean, he did play-by-play football. He did basketball. He did a bowling show. He did a quiz show. Yeah. I mean, he did everything. But it wasn't like he's really good at this and he's okay at that. He was very professional, very, and I learned a lot just watching him. I had mentioned to you too that we were at a banquet, and I came out and told a couple of little corny jokes, and the people laughed. They, okay, that's nice. And he got up and did a nightclub act. He was so prepared, and I'm thinking, that's the way to do it. You're going to be prepared.
You get a shtick, as they say.
Oh, yeah, a shtick.
We're going to take a break. We're going to hear from our good friends from Rich Entertainment. We'll be back more with Dan Neverth right after this.
At Rich Entertainment Group, their mission is simple: bringing friends and families together through unforgettable experiences. From live sports and theater productions to luxury travel and hospitality, they're creating moments that people truly remember. With 19 businesses and growing, Rich Entertainment Group isn't just a group of companies. It's a community built around connection, joy, and shared experiences. It's all about bringing people together, and honestly, that's something we can all use a little more of.
Rich Entertainment, and the Bison season's coming up, and we're going to have Mike Buczkowski on the week of the opener, so that's something to look forward to. But right now, just an all-time great, Dan Neverth. And Dan, you're still doing videos.
Yes.
I love the newscast videos. And you also play, and why not, a female character on the videos. And her name is.
Not that there's anything wrong with
No, there's
that.
nothing wrong with that. Her name is
Martha Sue.
Martha Sue.
Martha Sue is the female co-anchor with me when we do these fake newscasts. And she's something like, well, she doesn't look anything like the local female news people. She's not as attractive as any of them, but she thinks she is.
Yes.
She thinks she is.
And give a shout out to the gentleman who does all those great videos with you.
Oh, Ron Shoney. Ron Shoney puts them together. I write them. He puts them together. He inserts all kinds of little funny things and little clips and stuff like that. And does a great job.
Look for him on YouTube and Facebook. And so, Danny, when I was with the Empire Sports Network, you obviously have an attachment for sports, and you just love being around the Buffalo sports scene. So when I was at Empire Sports, we used to do the Bills player shows. Thurman Thomas, we did Frank Reich, and we did Cornelius Bennett, and we did the Bill Polian show, and then the Marv Levy show. So we were always doing Bills shows. We said, we carry the Sabre games. We need to do a Sabre show. Of course, the problem with the Sabres is, the Bills were a standing target. They played on Sundays for the most part. You could record a show during the week and know the players would be available. The Sabres play a mixed schedule. They're on the road. They're home. They're on the road. So we did a half-hour hockey show. We would do it on location. You were the host. Your son Danny also worked on the show. And we would tape 2 shows in a week, if I remember correctly, right? And all the top players, we'd have them on the show. I mean, it's not like it is today. I think it would be kind of tough today to get the guys to show up for nothing. And, and we did that. I think we did that for a year or two. Yeah. Right?
Yes, I still have some photos hanging on the wall at home with the players and myself. That was fun because, when I look back, I think, boy, I was pretty busy. I was really busy. But I was most fortunate. My late wife, Marie, really handled all the stuff at home, okay? And when she passed, I remember going to the bank and cashing a check for the first time. I never cashed a check.
You never had to do it?
Yeah, and she would write my name on the check. She could be arrested for something like that. And she did all the banking and all that stuff. And we would have a little thing where I'd say, Marie, I don't really have enough money in the drawer. So the money fairy, we had something called the money fairy, would somehow in the middle of the night come into the drawer and put like $100 and $20 bills in there. Okay, and so that was it.
One of the rarities or the oddities, I guess, is somebody that was in radio when you were in radio. You kept your real name.
Yes.
I mean, most of the guys you work with had...
Oh, you did too.
Yeah, obviously I did. My real name was Smith. I said, I got to get ethnic. Right. But you've always had the real name, and it's always worked for you.
Yeah, but when I would get mail at the radio station, it would be addressed to Dan Neverth, Dan Neverth, Dan Neverth, and nobody could ever spell it. Even people who knew me wouldn't be able to spell Neverth, Neaverth, okay? And one of my grandsons did a study, to genealogy thing, and he found out that it's not really Neverth, it's a corruption of Neaverth, German Irish. And so it's interesting when you look back on, your ancestors with stuff like that. So, yeah, I've kept the name, and very few people when I was coming up did keep their real names.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, Sandy Beach, that's not his real name. Did you know that? It's not his real name. But when he worked in Connecticut, there was a guy who was he was named after one of the airports there. Okay, so what they wanted was something you could remember. Okay, so Neverth is not easy to remember. I heard that guy. He was kind of funny. His name is Niebuhr or Never, but if my name was Jones or Johnson or Williams, then they could remember that easily.
Yeah, and back in the day, they didn't want anybody with an ethnic name.
No ethnic name.
Unless you were doing an ethnic show, right?
Okay.
Stan Koshinski got away with it. You were good buddies with one of my good friends, all-time great friends, Art Wander.
Oh, yeah.
He was a great guy. And you also were pals with one, I think, maybe the most, from all angles, talented radio guy, Jeff Kaye, he had a great voice, he could write, he could produce. He really jazzed up the Bills broadcasts when they were on KB radio.
That's what I wanted to touch base with you on. He did something on the radio that hadn't been done for broadcast. It was typically, the announcer and a color guy doing, usually an ex-player, but there were only like 2 or 3 guys, and there was no music or anything, right? And he did these production things with the music that were outstanding. It really, and it made something. If you're going to do it 2 hours before the game on the radio, you got to do something to make it interesting.
Capture the audience.
And it flew by, boom, 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 and he, you'd hear him in the background. I need more bass on that music. I need a little more bass. Okay, I need this. I need that. And he was so talented as a writer, as a producer, as a voice guy. He ended up being the voice of NFL films. And there is a quick story about that I wanted to pass along. He was working at WBEN Radio, doing the morning show, actually competing against me after a period of time. And they called him from NFL Films, and they said, we'd like you to narrate, we're going to send you some video, and we'd like you to narrate this thing for one of our subsidiary shows. It wasn't the main show, but it was something he wanted. And he said he always felt that was really an audition. He never said it was an audition, but so he did the voice track for that and sent it to him. And a couple months later, they called him, and they said, we want to hire you. We want to bring you down here, and so get ready. So he sold his house, got ready to move, and then all of a sudden he gets a letter in the mail, and the letter says, typical letter where we're turning you down. It said, "Thank you for your interest. It was very, you were very talented, but we've decided to go in another direction." So he gets this letter about that. And he said, what am I going to do? I sold my house. Now I'm not even going to get the job. I don't have a job at BEN Radio anymore. I'm out. What am I going to do? So now he's looking around for some kind of another job. And 2 weeks go by, and he gets a call from the head guy at the film NFL Films. And he said, Jeff, where the heck are you? And Jeff said, what do you mean? I got this letter from you. He said, what letter? He said, I got a letter saying that you're going in a different direction and thank me for. He said, I'll call you back. So an hour later, he calls back and says, Jeff, I'm so sorry. He said, we have these form letters that we sent out. So everybody was auditioning for this job, and we wanted you, and she accidentally sent you the same.
Wow.
Okay. So now the rest is history. He goes to NFL Films.
He's great.
And he was also doing, the thing that was so great for him was not only was he doing NFL Films, but they allowed him to do national commercials, voiceover national commercials at the same time. So he would do the NFL film narrations. Then he would get on a train and go into New York City, and he'd do commercials for national spots, national commercials, and really make a ton of money doing that. He was just so talented.
And you know what a fan I am of WKBW's War of the Worlds. I mean, I've run it into the ground. I've done so many things on it. But one of my all-time favorite and things I was so excited, I got to induct Jeff into the Buffalo Broadcast Hall of Fame. I think it was 2003. Unfortunately, they don't have a video of that. But Jeff was just so talented. I mean, he was a triple threat. I mean, he could say it, he could write it, he could produce it. So,
well, here's another thing about his background that you might be interested in. He was on an army base somewhere in the Middle East or whatever. He was in the service, and he met his wife, and they met, and they decided they were going to get married. But she said, "I'm not going to marry you until you get your degree," and so he hadn't finished high school. He did not finish high school. So it's, unless you get your GED, I'm not going to marry you. So he got his GED, and here's a guy with just a high school. Wait a minute, I'm just a high school. I guess the same guy. But anyway, so, and then the rest is history.
And didn't he also have a thing, I know I don't know if it ended up being his wife, where he had such a deep, great voice. Oh. Loved to put her ear on his chest to hear him just speak. Right?
Yes. Oh yeah. He would brag about that. He'd say, women love putting their head right here on my chest and ask me to talk, and they'd feel the vibration of it. Okay.
We're going to take a quick break again from Rich Entertainment. We'll be right back.
At Rich Entertainment Group, their mission is simple: bringing friends and families together through unforgettable experiences. From live sports and theater productions to luxury travel and hospitality, they're creating moments that people truly remember. With 19 businesses and growing, Rich Entertainment Group isn't just a group of companies. It's a community built around connection, joy, and shared experiences. It's all about bringing people together, and honestly, that's something we can all use a little more of.
Well, it's been great having Dan Neverth with us. And Dan, when's your next video coming out? Do you know?
We have them just about once a week.
Once a week.
Yeah, we did one that the guy that I do it with, Ron Shoney, he got a little nervous because we did the thing about the Channel 2 people. Okay, we didn't mention it was Channel 2, but we used their video. And I said, I'm not an expert in TV actually, but I often wondered why, and it's not fair. Because at the end of the newscast, the sports guy comes over and he talks a little bit, and the two anchors, they talk to him. And meanwhile, the hard-working weather woman is just standing there. All she gets to do is smile. And she's thinking about working on meteorology, getting all the information, and what kind of a short dress am I going to wear tomorrow, or a long dress, So we did a thing like that, and Ron got a little nervous about it. He said,
Ron used to work at Channel 2, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
yes, he did.
With so many changes of ownership, they don't know that. I think it was 85, 86. I was at Channel 7 for 8 years, and he used to come on. He used to literally run in the building while we were on the air doing the noon news, and you would run in with an editor, and you do a little clip, and you do the weather outside, which turned into a gig at Channel 2, and I mean, you did everything. But for that period of time, Don Postles was the news anchor. I did sports, and you did weather. And we had a 60 share. That's how television has changed. But the only time I saw you really kind of get nervous doing the weather outside was the day your good friend Joey Reynolds showed up unexpectedly on the back set wearing a nun's outfit.
Yes.
And I could see the look on your face because you knew Joey.
Well, we used to do a changeover on the radio station.
Right.
I was the afternoon guy at the time, so I'm off at 7. He comes on at 7, right? And it was in the era of play a lot of music, do it, boom, boom, get in there really quick, and we would just talk.
Yeah,
we would have a changeover.
An extended period of time.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
sometimes 7, 8 minutes, 12 minutes, 15 minutes. Okay, but we never rehearsed it. We never rehearsed anything. I don't know what he's going to talk about. He doesn't know what I'm going to say, and we just go back and forth. And they ended up being really funny. And I had mentioned on a video that we did about the old radio station that we never knew, like I said, what we were going to say. But the program director would go, "Oh, I just don't. I'm not listening. I'm not going to listen because you guys are not playing music. You're supposed to play a lot of music."
When he showed up dressed as a nun, it was the threat of what could happen, but he never really went too far with it. I remember that. Yeah.
Thank God.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Danny, it's great to have you here. Thanks so much for coming out.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
100 push-ups. You can still do 100 push-ups.
Yes, I can.
I can think about doing 100 push-ups, but it's not going to happen. And as two of your sons went to the University of Dayton, where I went, so there's a lot of connections back and forth. That's going to do it. We'll be back next week with Tim Graham will be our guest as we talk more Bills and I'm sure Sabres hockey. So that's on next week's edition of Nuff Said with yours truly. Until then, have a great night and a much better tomorrow.